I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
Good morning and welcome to this special edition of RTV Presents. I'm Christina Dragovich with continuing live coverage of the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. Hundreds of thousands of people now line the streets of London, and thousands, including hundreds of world leaders, are making their way into Westminster Abbey, where the Queen's coffin, which has been lying in state at Westminster Hall the last 4 days, will soon arrive. As we are moments away from the coffin's trek to the church, a somber mood blankets the entire world as we prepare to bid a final farewell to a woman of royalty, described as a towering presence on the world stage. Queen Elizabeth, Britain's longest reigning monarch, who served as head of the Commonwealth of Nations, died peacefully at her home in Scotland on September 8th. She was 96. The new king, remembering his mother in his first televised statement after her death, saying she was an inspiration and example to him and his entire family.
To my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you. Thank you for your love and devotion to our family and to the family of nations you have served so diligently all these years. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
From the time of that speech, one day after his mother's passing, King Charles has had a whirlwind schedule ahead of today's funeral. In addition to meeting with Commonwealth leaders, the new monarch has been engaged in a series of public events, attending a procession of his mother's coffin in Edinburgh, where he also held an audience with Scottish officials before official visits to Wales and Northern Ireland. He's met and shook the hands of bystanders, also mourning his mother's passing along his journey. King Charles III also leading the procession of members of the royal family in London as a gun carriage carried the Queen's body to Westminster Hall, where she's been lying in state for the past 4 days. Queues to see the Queen stretching up to 5 miles as thousands made the journey to see their monarch for one last time. Our Jerome Sawyer is on the ground in London for us this morning as we witness this historic and majestic moment. Jerome?
Good morning, Christina. We are here on Parliament Street. We are just near to the Abbey, and just want to sort of give you some perspective on everything that has happened thus far. It's been a very busy morning. We arrived here I would say about 4:15, which is probably about 11:30 your time. And then we were able to maneuver ourselves through quite a bit of blockades and barricades. There's heavy security here. There's quite a bit of activity. At that point when we arrived, the crowds were not as big. We had people who were, I would say, probably behind me about 2 or 3 deep at that point. That has swelled now to about 12 plus deep. Even this area where I'm standing in, when we first arrived, people were lined off, people who had been here for hours were waiting. But in the 4+ hours that we have been here, this crowd has grown exponentially. I mean, just look right here behind me. In the background, you can hear, of course, music playing as the processions begin, as we are awaiting now all this activity to begin at Westminster Abbey. And just to give you an idea of where I am positioned, and if you see behind me, there is the famous Big Ben, and over there to my left is the Westminster Abbey. In the background, you can hear the band playing as the events of the morning really get underway in earnest. Now, just to bring you up to speed on sort of what's happening, right? We arrived here shortly before 5. Now, since then, the doors to Westminster Hall have closed, and that ended, in effect, the public viewing of the Queen's body, which was lying in state for several days. You remember people waiting in line sometimes up to 14 hours to be able to come in and pay their respects. Now, the Abbey itself, where the service is taking place, that opened at about 8 a.m. and they began receiving attendees. The procession that will accompany the coffin from Westminster Hall is expected to take exactly 10 minutes. That procession will include the Royal Navy and Royal Marines. The procession will be led by about 200 musicians, including pipes and drums from the Scottish and Irish regiments. So that is expected to, while it's going to be somber, it is certainly going to be quite a display. Now, once the body arrives at Westminster Abbey, the Dean of Westminster will conduct the funeral service. There will be readings by the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, along with Patricia Scotland. She is the Secretary General of the Commonwealth of Nations. That Commonwealth, of course, the Bahamas is a part of that grouping. The Archbishop of Canterbury will be giving the sermon. Now, towards the end of this service, which is expected to last just about an hour, there will be 2 minutes moment of silence across Britain. And that, of course, will indicate the end of the service. The procession now will then follow the coffin to the Wellington Arch near Hyde Park before being driven to Windsor. So that procession, for the most part, will be where a lot of the audience here and a lot of the spectators will get an opportunity to really formally say their goodbyes as the coffin is processed. And this will certainly be the last public opportunity for people here to say their goodbyes and to view the Queen's body in that procession moving on. Of course, we are strategically placed to be able to capture that, but for now we are live here on Parliament Street as we await the official start of today's official state funeral.
Thanks, Jerome. We'll check back in with you in just a bit. And since we got that introduction from Jerome, we've seen the arrival of U.S. President Joe Biden. Later in studio, we'll also be joined by Chairman of the Advisory Council of Public Records, Bahamas Historical Society, Dr. Michael Toot, as well as the Director of Music at Christ Church Cathedral, Adrian Archer. We'll get to all of that in just a minute, but first, among the 500 world leaders expected to attend today's funeral are U.S. President Joe Biden, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, also in London. The pictures you're seeing now from a meeting of Commonwealth leaders with the King on Saturday past. Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness there, and President of Trinidad and Tobago Paula May Weeks were among regional leaders in London this morning, including our Governor General, His Excellency Cornelius A. Smith, and Prime Minister Philip Davis, who you see there shaking hands with King Charles in their meeting. Government also dedicating a recent session of the House of Assembly to the late Queen, where Prime Minister Davis and opposition leader Michael Pintard spoke about her legacy and the future of our relationship with the Crown.
During her visits to the Bahamas, Queen Elizabeth would have met with all our political leaders and Bahamians from all walks of life. She had a particular regard for the people of the Bahamas, particularly young people.
King Charles was an early and vigorous proponent of the need to do something more and better to protect our environment. Prince William has followed his footsteps. They have both publicly stated their strong support for the work that we are doing here in the Bahamas. And I look forward to the further strengthening of relationship between our two countries, especially in this regard.
Well, we are pleased to be joined in studio now by the Chairman of the Advisory Council of Public Records, Bahamas Historical Society, Dr. Michael Toot. Dr. Toot, thank you so much for being here with us this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Christina.
Of course, it's a very early morning, but a time that we all have to get together to talk about what this day means for us here in the Bahamas and around the world. So for the benefit of our viewers at home and around the world, walk us through some of the historical connections between the Bahamas and the British monarchy.
Well, I begin with the Queen's visits to the Bahamas in 1966, then in 1975, 1977, 1985, then a trek from Freeport, Grand Bahama to Nassau in 1994. So she, along with us, have had a love relationship, a mutual one of great respect. The Bahamas has, looking at her model of a queen, have come to be endeared to her in so many ways. One of them, constancy. One of them, the elevation of civility. One of them, the astounding commitment to duty is just unbelievable. And then when you consider that we have a heritage coming from different places, but mainly from Africa, and coming into the Caribbean and different places, the diaspora, by the grace of God. And then we consider her legacy, which spans over 1,000 years, that God preserved her lineage to govern and oversee these wonderful territories. And now, of course, the Commonwealth, which began in December 1931, 5 years after Her Majesty was born.
Right. So you speak about her legacy,
Yes.
and we know that even with the Queen's death, the British monarchy remains intact. We see that with the ascension of King Charles to the throne and the ceremonial events that we've witnessed up to this point. But for the rest of the world, what does this moment in time really signify? What does it mean?
For the rest of the world, it signifies, in my humble opinion, the importance of regionalism, the importance of sharing power, the importance of highlighting the value of institutions in society, having regard for consistency, passing on legacy, having regard for traditionalism. As you know, Her Majesty was a tremendous traditionalist.
Yes, yes.
Ceremony was very, very, very keen to her. And also she sought to respect people, notwithstanding differences. We talk about the Commonwealth, but the fact of the matter is, we are very different people based on cultural nuances, based on heritage, based on so many different things. And yet she was able to galvanize so many nations and to keep them together, even when the British Empire recognized that it could not manage all of these territories and domains and principalities by itself. And wisdom, the received wisdom of the ages, she simply accepted and was a major player in the devolution of power.
Right.
Okay, to various peoples, allowing them to govern themselves. Because let's remember now that even though we regard Her Majesty and the British monarchy very highly, the Queen doesn't rule over the Commonwealth. Okay, these territories, these nations, they have their autonomy. All right, and so she plays that ceremonial role, but nevertheless a most valuable role for us to keep before us a high standard of civility. And so really and truly, I think her legacy will really, of course, it's still to be written, but what we have seen already is that her legacy is one of a leader who was able to galvanize her territories and to, as it were, pass on traditions that enable them to still exist in a very viable way.
Yes. And that really is the beauty of the Commonwealth and where we are right now.
Indeed.
So we'll leave it there for right now. And Dr. Toot, all eyes are on London this morning with watch parties across the world and even here at home. We check in with one watch party on Grand Bahama when RTV's live coverage of Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral continues. Our live coverage of the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II continues. Joining us again are our guests this morning, Dr. Michael Toot and Adrian Archer. So, gentlemen, we've just watched a 1-hour-long funeral to the T. We saw a 6-minute sermon. What are some of your thoughts? I'm going to begin with you, Dr. Toot.
Very well. Quite striking. I was thinking about this was a clinic at its height in dignity and simplicity. And then it also struck me her name, Her Majesty's name, Elizabeth. It is Hebrew, and it actually means God is my oath. And when you think about her life, she lived out her name to its fullest. She kept her oath. She was remarkable in her love of a country, of a realm, and she always, just sought to continue to enable people from different places to come into their own potential and to respect differences. This ability is just profound, and I think what a fitting tribute, the way the funeral service unfolded to a great monarch that we can all learn from and give back, as it were, our humble homage and attention and be better for it.
Right, and she definitely dedicated her life to this, and some of that played out in some of the song choices on how everything was laid out. So tell us.
For me, it was an emotional roller coaster. As a musician, you hear nuances of chord structures and stuff like that, and I thought that it was exactly what I thought they would do. I thought the combination of the stately music, the hymns, the new compositions were fantastic. The really lovely and emotional bit at the end where the lone bagpiper played Sleep, Dearie, Sleep. I mean, it was like a production, as they always do.
Yes.
But when you think about it, they buried their mother and their grandmother and their great-grandmother. And if you put yourself in that kind of position, you have to feel it's very, very sad for them. And I think that the music sort of brings you to a place where the appreciation in the songs and what was presented for a life well lived and 1 hour teaches us a lesson, teaches us a great lesson, because the sermon in 6 minutes was so profound.
Yes.
The whole thing was done in 1 hour, and it just is so amazing that they timed that to the T. And it's just a combination of beautiful things together. The lessons read beautifully, the sermon presented well, the hymns sung well, the descants, the piping at the end. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me how well they do this. And following up on what Doc said, the combination of the different religious leaders in the service showed what she was about. That even though she was an Anglican, that was her faith, that was her religion. There were interdenominational, there were Roman Catholics, there were Sikhs and Buddhists and people singing in the choir in turbans. You know what I mean? It's just so amazing.
The diversity,
of
the
Commonwealth showed. And then, of course, Baroness Scotland, who represents the Commonwealth, was wearing her sash or whatever it was with all the Commonwealth colors on it.
All inclusive.
It was just beautifully done. Beautifully done. I expected it.
Right.
But of course, when it happens, you go, wow. Wow, again. Because every time they do these sort of things, they do them so well. And you just left to wonder. I mean, I know as a musician how to plan things, but I have to execute on what's happening behind the scenes. What the director would have gone through, and the rehearsals, and the amount of times that they rehearse in the middle of the night.
Wow.
To make this work.
To get everything right.
To get everything precise. I mean, to the degree that they actually had an empty coffin in the church rehearsing the procession so that when the coffin got at the place, at the catafalque, the music stopped. That's what they do, and they do it so well. And it's just flawless, completely flawless. And I'm sorry, in the next service will be just as flawless.
Yes, because, I mean, there will be more services.
Yes, there will be more services, at least 2 more.
Yes, yes. So thank you for taking us through that. And like you said, it really was a journey that they took all of us along with. And so now our Jerome Sawyer joins us again from the streets of London, where thousands of people are still lining the streets to pay their respects to the late Queen. Jerome, we understand you're standing at the point where the Queen's coffin just passed.
You're right, Christina. Yes, we were able to witness the coffin and the procession with the King and the royals in tow, as well as cars behind. Quite, again, another surreal experience for so many people here. I am joined by two individuals who are a part of the thousands who have come here today to pay their respects. And I have to tell you, I chose this gentleman because of all of these medals that he so smartly displayed here. But I'm with Andy and Elaine Roberts. Correct. Yes. So, Andy, certainly tell us a little bit about these medals and what they represent.
They represent my time that I've served for my country and the Queen, over 23 years in the Royal Engineers. So I've deployed to Bosnia in the Balkans, been to both Gulf conflicts and served in other countries around the world over that time.
And why was it important for you to be out here today, fully regaled?
I think it's important to show my respect to the Queen. She's been my boss for nearly half my life, so it's an important day to show respect and be here to see everything, really.
Elaine, you were here as well with other family members. I stood in awe at the level of respect that I saw as people just stood here and listened and waited.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody, across the world has got so much respect for Elizabeth II, and it's just been a complete honour to be here and to pay our respects to her.
And you took time to get dressed, come here and stand all of this time, and you didn't move.
No, we just wanted to be here. We wanted more than anything to be here and just spend time with our family, obviously respecting the Queen and seeing all the wonderful processions and just enjoying the whole atmosphere, although being a very sad day.
Andy, I am always so amazed at the discipline that I see the British display. I still marvel at it every time I see it.
Yeah, it's something that's built into you from basic training, and it's something that just stays with you. I mean, I left the army 15 years ago, and it's the first time I've worn my beret for about 8 hours in one go without taking it off. So it's a big thing.
Andy and Elaine, thank you very much. And the people of the Bahamas, thank you for sharing this moment with them. Thank you so very much. Christina, you see here just two examples of really what this day has meant to so many people and what the lead up to this day has meant. I have to tell you, in moving around the city in the past few days, these are the types of conversations I continue to have with people. And the other thing before I go, just how gracious people have been this morning and throughout when they asked where you're from, and I said, we're from the Bahamas. And they say, oh, you've come such a long way. Thank you. They literally thanked us for being here and being a part of it. So just, another great example of the British hospitality and the respect and the kindness that they have shown us here over the past few days. So as you can tell, the crowds are starting to disperse behind us as the procession itself has moved on. Some people are still here waiting, but the city is packed. It's probably going to take us just as long to get out of here as it did to get in. But for now, we are here live in Whitehall as the procession passes with the late Queen Elizabeth II. Christina?
Thanks, Jerome. Our Jerome Sawyer in London for us this morning. Now we're back in studio with Dr. Toot and Mr. Archer as we get ready to wrap up with some of your final thoughts. Dr. Toot?
Very well. I am thinking back to the Magna Carta, which was the document that was put in place to restrict the powers of the monarchy. And it came about when you had a rogue king seizing all power and not wanting to share the power. And the Magna Carta, even though it was dismantled for a period of time, it came back in the 1700s when it was acknowledged that it embodied certain inalienable eternal rights of individuals, okay? And the empire, which stretched around the world after Elizabeth I, earlier we were talking about the relevance of today.
Yes.
It is most relevant because at its height, the British Empire was really substantially global.
Yes.
And we need to remember our history. And the history of the empire is also tied to the Bahamas, right? Now, in the sermon today, that brief, impactful sermon, it was mentioned that those who hold on to power will long be forgotten.
Right.
But those who share power will forever be remembered, as was Queen Elizabeth, Her Majesty II. She shared power, understanding the times in which we were living. She oversaw the dismantling of the empire and devolving power to regional states and nations, territories, principalities. She shared power, and she loved her people. And I think in that, it's a metaphor, the monarchy. It's a metaphor of individual, collective, and national maturity, moving from a place of simply being primitive, power-hungry, and getting to a place where holding on to power is not the most important thing.
Right.
Sharing it, being equitable, heightening equanimity, fairness, and justice, and wanting to see everybody come into their own potential is the thing I will take away and really pass on to all of my children and my public as long as I have breath. And then to be committed to service and realize that it's not about me as an individual, it's about expanding the common good in a country.
Yes, I think you pretty much summed it up about what Queen Elizabeth II was all about. You know, sharing the power, the evolution and the growth of the Commonwealth, bringing us to where we are now. So, Mr. Archer, your final thoughts.
Well, I wish I could be as profound as that. But I'll share two things with you. I have had the occasion to meet the Queen, and I always thought on both occasions that I encountered her to be a very kind and simple, smiley, friendly person. I used to be, when I first started my job, I was able to direct the choir at her visit to the Bahamas in 1977 Jubilee tour. Wow. And we had just gotten a new organ in our cathedral, and if you know the Christchurch Cathedral, the organ is upstairs and the choir is downstairs. And I was conducting a piece downstairs and praying to God that nothing would go wrong, that the organist wouldn't turn a page wrong, so the whole thing would be a disaster. And when I sat down, I was sweating profusely, and I looked over at her, and she just gave me the look and the nod, like, yeah, you're perfectly fine. That was the first time. And the second time, I was in the cast of Sammy Swain when it was done here for Chogum in 1985. And she came up on the stage to meet the cast, the principal cast, the main singers. I was not one of them. I was in the background. But I think the protocol people took her the wrong way. So she ended up on the line.
Wow.
And right at the end of the line was me. And she came right along and she said, "Thank you very much. I loved it." And I said, "Thank you very much, man." And I couldn't say another word after that because she was so radiant and smiling and lovely. You know what I mean? So I had my own encounter with her. But I'll leave the program by saying this. That's the only monarch that I have known.
Yes.
Other people may have remembered George VI. I grew up, I'm not anywhere near 70. So that's the only queen or head of state, let's put it that way, that the Bahamas that I have known. And so now she leaves Westminster Abbey where she began.
Yes.
She was made queen in Westminster Abbey. She was married in Westminster Abbey. And now she leaves Westminster Abbey. Having done an amazing job, 70 years as the Queen, and as the Doc has really nicely said, shared the power, not being able to hold it all onto herself, and really through all of her presentations, her speeches, the last one particularly where she says, "We will meet again," for the COVID.
Yes.
The most amazing speech.
Right.
I've played it over and over again. We will meet again. And just even now, even in this particular type of environment, we will meet again.
Indeed.
It is the Christian message.
Yes, it is.
We will meet again. And so I just think that today is the end of an era in lots of ways. So we have a new era now, and so we'll see what happens after that. But you know, we can only be grateful for our head of state and the traditions that they have passed along. And I think it's just been a marvelous, wonderful tribute to someone who has given so much years of service, who has been impeccable
Yes.
No controversies, no nothing, just
Modesty.
done a thing in the background and has done well. And we wish her, we bless her, we pray for her soul and the repose of her soul.
Indeed, and if I might just join in about her eclectic appreciation for different faiths, I had the privilege when I lived in London of actually being invited to a church service with the royal family at St. James Chapel. It was just a wonderful setting. Again, here is a lady who is a template for how to live in civil society, to manage conflicts, to focus on resolutions, to evolve into one's fullest potential. Just an amazing legacy. And even though it's the end of an era, there is wonderful continuity for the future.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes. And speaking of the Queen and her persona, she definitely left an impact on many of the people that she met during her reign. There was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity captured on camera, the moment that stays in the heart of the Bahamian girl, now a woman, who welcomed Queen Elizabeth II to her last visit to the Bahamas in 1994.
I remember just thinking, wow, I'd be able to actually say that I've been in the presence of royalty and spoken to the Queen of England.
We sit down with Alexis McKinney to reflect on her once-in-a-lifetime moment, meeting Queen Elizabeth II.
I was given the opportunity to present the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, with a bouquet of flowers as a welcoming gift on her state visit to the country.
It was March 1994 when McKinney greeted the Queen at Prince George Wharf, along with another familiar face you may recognize, then Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham. But to the little girl about to meet royalty, the focus was on the Queen.
In that moment, I felt like a princess. Just being able to be in her presence, it gave me a feeling of confidence. She walked closer and closer to me, and I gently did a curtsy.
Is that this right here?
This one right here. And I was then told by Mr. Andrew McKinney that I should then say to her, Your Majesty, and wait. I must be quiet and then wait for her to respond. And once she responds, then I'm allowed to speak. She was quite pleased, and she definitely loved my outfit. She kept remarking about that. And then they continued on down the red carpet to meet the Governor General at that point in time.
An unforgettable moment.
Unforgettable. Surreal.
As the years have passed and the world has changed, so has McKinney's view of Britain's longest-serving monarch.
She gave her life to the crown, honor and duty to her family, to her family's legacy. And we, in the general public, are capable of living our lives and having free will to do as we want and as we please. And to serve your country, to serve your people in such magnitude over the time frame and in the way that she did it, so humbly, so graceful. I'm very honored to have been able to meet her, and I think that she has made a mark on this world.
Are Bahamians' attitudes toward royals shifting?
I believe both Harry got such a great magnitude of support when he visited on his visit, and then most recently Prince William and Kate, when they visited, they also were given the royal treatment. The whole Bahamas was excited. I mean, it was the first time since, I believe, 2019 that we've even had Junkanoo on Bay Street. So I do believe as a people, we definitely have great honor in being proud of still being a part of the Commonwealth. This is history, and it's a part of my family and my life now.
Yes.
Yes.
So will you be watching for her final farewell?
I sure will. I follow everything with the royal family.
So as we mentioned, the monarchy will continue beyond this point. This is the end of an era, but we now have King Charles III. So we know what the monarchy has done so far, but where are we going? We've heard that, attitudes may be shifting. What are some of our thoughts on the future from here?
Well, again, people have a right to determine their future. Again, Magna Carta established that. The Declaration of Independence in the United States, we saw that because, remember, there was civil war in the United Kingdom that led to quite a number of their citizens fleeing to the United States, and in particular, that place in Massachusetts called New England. And the Anabaptists, the Puritans, the Presbyterians now, okay, and they were able to prevail, and as a result of that, the United States ended up receiving their independence, which of course, again, the monarchy evolved to appreciate various characteristics, various nations, various people, and then come to not only respect that, but to enable them to come into further development by lending their assets to persons in their territory and in their domain. And so, again, the evolution will continue, I believe, into the future. Because even places like our neighbor Barbados that just became a republic. And talking about the monarchy, right? The monarchy is tempered because it's now not an absolute monarchy, but it's a constitutional monarchy. So there are written rules, regulations, customs, conventions that govern them. And the Queen, the King is not allowed to even go into Parliament. Okay.
So Adrian, on that note, what are some of your thoughts about, what are some of our next steps? What does the future look like?
I think that I think that there has to be a conversation, a sensible conversation. About the whole thing, because I don't think that King Charles, Prince William, nobody wants a country not to decide its own future. And in fact, when Prince William was here, because I think that in Jamaica, the Jamaican Prime Minister made a point to say to his face that we are looking at making some changes. So when he came to the Bahamas, thankfully we were a lot more tactful than that. And but he said in his speech at the ballroom where they had that reception, he said, the nations have to decide what they want to do, and we will respect that.
They anticipate
They anticipate the conversation. But I'll tell you this, and I threw this at the doc in the room there. Barbados became a republic, but the Governor General is still a dame. So explain that.
Very interesting.
You know what I mean? So she kept the title of dame, and their honors are still English. So, we have our Bahamian honors, so there has to be a conversation where we're all participating, where we have, God forgive me, a referendum, to have a conversation and have a decision about what that is going to be.
What we want,
and how we want it to look like. Because these people who are, the people who are in London are not beating us down to become who we want to be subjects. We're not subjects anymore. We have a constitutional system of government. Does anybody really, I know we swear to the Queen, this allegiance type of situation, but do they actually come here and tell us what to do? No, they don't. You know what I mean? So what does all that mean? I don't know that we know what that means, what that's going to look like. So that's a conversation that he said we have to have.
And I think it will unroll unfold.
It will unroll
as time goes by.
Yeah, you have this dichotomy, Christina, of continuity and discontinuity. And it happens on the individual microscopic level too.
Definitely.
You need to determine what is going to work for you to enable you to come into your full potential, and what things you need to shed that are not in keeping with enabling you to come into your full potential and be all that you can be.
And your identity.
Right? Now, in trying to, as it were, navigate, it's important, as my good friend here did say, we need to be a bit dispassionate, less emotive, more civil.
And with that, I know we can still go on and on. These are definitely the conversations that need to be had, from here forward.
Indeed.
So thank you so much for waking up with us and sharing this historic occasion with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And it has certainly been a pleasure here from the R News team. We want to thank you for joining us for this special edition, the special morning edition of RTV Presents. On behalf of the entire team, including our Jerome Sawyer in London and all of our guests, I'm Christina Dragovich, signing off. We leave you now with a few more live pictures from the state funeral of the late Queen Elizabeth II as the procession of the Queen's coffin approaches Wellington Arch in London. Good morning, Bahamas.
party. Schön.